Hi everyone and welcome. If you were watching my live stream earlier today, you don't have to watch this video, you're welcome to, but this is the part that I couldn't get playing during the live stream, so I thought I'd just put it up here as a little standalone video of my n=1 experiment on what is happening to my blood glucose when I'm eating meat, and that was in association with whether red meat is insulinogenic or not. So if you haven't watched the live stream, go and watch the first 30 minutes or so, and you will know pretty much everything that I know about insulin and glucagon and what's happening when you're eating meat, etc., and how clever our bodies actually are. So let me just play this video here. But before I'm playing the video, I just want to show you as well the actual meal that I had. So this is what it looked like. It's just a couple of pieces of fillet steak, and I have about 4 heaped tablespoons of homemade pesto, which consists of extra virgin olive oil, cold pressed, that is, some walnuts, garlic and basil. That's it, and salt. So just to make sure that it wasn't impacting the test, I was actually having a little bit of a calculation around how many carbs that would contain, and I can happily say that it won't be more than maybe 2 grams of carbs in the amount of pesto that I had on my meat. So it's not a lot, but there's some, but not a lot to actually worry about. So here we go. So this is me testing my blood glucose before actually starting the experiment. So I haven't eaten yet. This was on the same day as I ate the cream, if you were looking at that video. So my blood glucose is 4.0 fasted. So between the time I ate the cream and I had my meat, it was 6 hours of eating nothing. So between there, my blood glucose obviously dropped to 4.0. 15 minutes later, I didn't expect a huge change in my blood glucose, and as you will see in a second, there really wasn't, but rather it had gone down from 4 to 3.9, and I attribute this to that either random error of the machine, which is entirely possible, or the insulinogenic effect of the meat, which means that when I eat the meat, I get an insulin response, which then lower my blood glucose because it would be stored. So 30 minutes later, my blood glucose actually had changed and it had gone up slightly. So yeah, 4.2, and I thought, could it be due to the pesto? I don't think so. I don't think that affected it much at all, and in general, oil or fats are usually dulling the response, but I think that is more applicable to edible carbs than to protein, but I don't really know. Now, 60 minutes after was supposed to be my last test, but it had risen quite a lot, and I say quite a lot, but it's not a lot, but it had risen to 4.8, a little bit tricky to see on the screen there. But I definitely attribute this to the effect of glucagon release, which I'm talking about in the live stream. So I find this really interesting, so I decided to do one more reading at 90 minutes. And yeah, I always just curious for how long this rise in blood sugar would go on for. So glucagon is pretty much the opposite to insulin, so it will release sugar from the liver. And as a result, after 90 minutes, I had 4.6. So clearly, my blood glucose had stabilized or turned around at maybe 4.8, maybe 4.9, something like that, and then started to go down again. So even though there was a 0.8 rise in my blood glucose, I'm still within a healthy limit for where you usually want your fasted blood glucose to be. So for a healthy fasted blood glucose, what is considered normal is anything between 4 and 5.6. So I gave this example in the live stream, but if I had been eating the meat and an hour later when my blood glucose was up to 4.8, if I had gone to the doctor for a blood test to check my blood glucose, and they would have checked it at that point, and they had asked me previously to be fasted, overnight fasted, before doing it, they wouldn't have been able to tell that I had been eating anything. So they would just sign off the paperwork and saying, you're fine, everything is within the normal range for fasted blood glucose level. So it went up slightly, and that is because of the glucagon, obviously. So insulin is a storage hormone. It wants you to store everything like amino acids, sugars, blah blah blah. So that's why it will also help a bit with muscle protein synthesis. Whereas glucagon has the opposite effect. It's a catabolic hormone, but mainly what it does is that it stimulates the liver to release stored carbohydrates, so it increases your blood sugar. And when we're eating meat, we have this mechanism in place because meat is not the same as carbohydrates. When you eat carbohydrates, you only get an insulin release, and the reason for this is that all that needs to happen is for your body to clear the blood of that extra blood glucose that is in there. If your blood glucose levels are too high, they're basically toxic, and you will glycate all your cells near the bloodstream really quickly, and that's not going to be good. It's going to be very inflammatory, etc. So you want to clear it as quickly as possible. That's why you only get the insulin release until you hit a critical level, at which point your body will counteract with some glucagon to find the balance for a healthy blood glucose level. Now, when you are eating a protein only, and I'm talking about animal protein now, I'm not talking about legumes because they contain a lot of carbohydrates, etc., so they don't count. I'm talking about animal proteins now. What will happen is that you will get an insulin release, and that is in order to store the amino acids that you are getting, but you will also get a glucagon response, and that is for one function is to release the blood glucose from the blood to keep your blood sugar stable. Because if you only had insulin and you didn't eat any carbohydrates, what would happen is that your blood glucose would go down, you will become hypoglycemic, you will pass out, and you might potentially die. So that's not a very good survival strategy. That's why we have glucagon at the same time. But glucagon also, when it releases or when it gets delivered to release glucose into your system, it will allow the insulin to function the way it's supposed to function. It can start storing both the glucose and the amino acids in your blood, and this will actually promote your muscle protein synthesis and just storage of everything. So the body is really, really clever at what it's doing. So I don't think we should argue with our bodies. I think we should just eat real food, preferably a meat-based diet. That is our absolute base, and how much you want to branch out from there is obviously up to you. I'm not a militant carnivore. I do eat some blueberries. If there's something else, if I'm going out eating and I get a steak and I actually get some salad with that, I might eat the salad. I'm not that fussed, but I don't have a lot of problems. If you're someone who's really sick or have an autoimmune disorder or something like that, you might not be able to get away with that. So, what's the benefit of doing it? Is there a benefit, or are you just doing it for the fun of it? Everything is up to you. I'm only here to give you some insights into my knowledge and my findings and how I'm working. If you did the same experiment, you wouldn't have the same figures as me. You might have the same pattern, but you still wouldn't get exactly the same thing or the same result as me. So how much did I eat? I didn't say that this time, I don't think, but it was about 200 grams of fillet steak. So it wasn't a huge portion. So if you are someone who's type 2 diabetic, maybe you don't want to eat 500 grams of meat in one sitting, because you will get a huge insulin release. and you don't really want that. It's very taxing on your system, and it doesn't allow for you to heal your type 2 diabetes. So it might be better for you to eat smaller portions so that you have a smaller insulin response every time you eat. Or even better, look into Dr. Jason Fung's work. He is brilliant. I think he's a nephrologist or something like that, working with kidneys from the beginning, but for many years now he has been curing type 2 diabetics with fasting. Basically just fasting. Stop eating, give your system some time to heal and kind of reset, going back to its normal function. And then from there, obviously you can't go back to eating a high carb diet, but you might be able to get away with some of it. Some people will, some people won't, but that's hard to tell, for me to tell. So experiment, try things, see how you react to them, and act accordingly if you want to feel as good as possible, which I think most of us want. And yeah, I'm not going to make this much longer because you may as well just go and watch the live stream. The first 30 minutes is where I'm talking, and then if you want to watch the questions, you're more than welcome to watch that as well. So that's pretty much all I wanted to say about that. So for me, eating meat works perfectly fine. I can see that I'm not insulin resistant because I'm having an insulin response, a healthy one. It drops from 4 to 3.9. If it dropped at all, that's what it showed, but there's always a little bit of an error in all kind of measuring. So I'm responding to the insulin, and clearly I have a glucagon response. It raises my blood sugar, but only a little bit, and it keeps me within the fasted blood glucose or healthy fasted blood glucose range, which is brilliant. You don't want to go over that too often or too much, because every time you have too much glucose in your system, you will be able to, or you will start glycating different proteins in your body. And when you're glycating things like the cell walls inside of your blood vessels, you will get inflammation, and things can get stuck in those and start ripping them apart. And when they start healing, that's when you get plaque, and eventually you might get heart disease and so on. So try to keep your blood sugar low as possible without being hypoglycemic, and consistently low, because it's also a bit the doses in the poison. So if you're overloading your blood system with a lot of carbs every now and then, unfortunately, when there are that many carbs present, when the concentration is really high, that will also glycate a lot of proteins around in your blood vessels, etc. So try to avoid that, try to keep it low for the most time. Whenever it goes up a bit, try to keep it, within certain limits. I don't have numbers for you, but the lower the better. And yeah, that was pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed that, and I will see you again very soon.